Dr. O'Connor, before we begin, I would like to go over the ground rules for this deposition. The committee will conduct today's deposition in accordance with the House of Representatives regulations for the use of deposition authority, which were furnished to your council. This regulation is incorporated into the rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform at Rule 15, which was also furnished to your council. The questioning will proceed in rounds. The majority will ask questions for an hour, and then the minority will have an opportunity to ask questions for an hour if they choose. There will be one staff counsel per side asking the questions during each round. To the extent members have questions for the witness, they will be propounded during their side's respective rounds. Do you understand?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
So, gentlemen, we intend to assert both privileges with regard to any questions that would be asked at this deposition. And Dr. O'Connor will not answer any questions.
Now let's go back to the US. A new book called 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and the Democrats Lost America, details the influential role Jill Biden played in her husband's administration. Tina, this influence only increased as the president's cognitive decline became more and more pronounced. Tina, I do wonder, did we already have a female president?
Look, Dr. Jill, I think, fully took the reins, and sadly, I think the more he declined, the more power herself and her Chief of Staff, Barnoff, got. You know, they covered up everything. This book is an absolute bombshell and totally says how Dr. Jill and her Chief of Staff pretty much ran everything. And the Chief of Staff now, who has been called to a couple of inquiries and the White House refused to go, has a lot to answer for. I think Trump is going to really, really drill deep on this. But of course, Dr. Jill and her Chief of Staff are in a protected species, and the Chief of Staff is now heading up the President Biden library. But I think the full truth, it's coming out now, and we all knew. I mean, we all witnessed it, and it's disgraceful how everything was covered up.
It was, and I wonder, Tina, whether we'll ever know who really ran the show, and not just for those last few months. Prue, the cognitive decline was obvious from the start. We were covering it in the election campaign, in the 2020 election campaign. Do you think we'll ever have any sort of transparency on who made some of these big calls, who decided, even in the final days, was going to be on the pardon list, the presidential pardon list?
Well, there's been such a cover-up, and when you look at how Jill Biden attended Hunter's trials, even when she had to travel, overnight from international countries, the influence was cancerous. I also wonder how much Obama had a play in it all as well, although Jill seems to be such a power-hungry type and a controlling type. The fact that she's a doctor too, she knew what was wrong with her husband, but
Well,
power.
she's not a real doctor, Prue. She's
Well, whatever she was,
No, she's not.
was totally
She's
manipulative.
got a doctorate in
A doctorate,
education, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, she needed to learn a few things about democracy and why he was perhaps appointed, and that, it was totally undemocratic for the wife, the +1, to be running the country if that's the case. But, there was something so smelly about that whole administration and the Democratic Party, and it's all coming out, and it needs to. And, people throw a lot of mud at Trump, but this is so much worse.
The House committees are not giving up. They're still requesting they appear. We'll see what the consequences of these guys refusing to appear continually.
No, I think they're going to be digging continuously into precisely what happened, because I think there's some people who need to go to jail over what happened. I mean, what we saw should not happen in a democracy. This is banana republic stuff.